panel of admission directors from some really great schools. Why don't you come on up here and I'll introduce all of you when you're here. And we're going to talk a little bit about what they look for, how they decide who gets in, who doesn't, what fit means. I mean, it's sort of an intangible word that's bandied around a lot. Do you fit with the culture of a program or a school? How do you know? Usually what you need to do is to visit. Go to a campus, have lunch with a few students, hang out to get a real feel for if you think you can fit in. I think that's the best way to determine fit. But anyway, let me introduce our candidates here. Not our candidates, our panelists. Well, one time all of you were candidates, weren't you? No? You don't have an MBA? I do not yet. Okay, you're going to get one. I can tell you right now. All right, to my immediate left, we have someone who came all the way from Evanston. Now, if you know where Evanston is, maybe you know what school is in Evanston. Who knows? Anybody? Yeah, that's right. And it's Lance Bennett, and he is Director of Diversity Admissions, which is an unusual title to have in an admissions office. And he's been doing that for how many years? 5 years? 5.5 years. 5.5 years. And next to Lance, we have a familiar face who's been with me a number of other times at different Senate Court events all over the United States. John Lee, who's Associate Director of Admissions at UCLA's School of Management, Anderson School. And then we have Taylor Fisher, who does not have an MBA, but I can tell you that before this panel is over, he's going to apply himself. And Taylor is Assistant Director of Admissions at UVA's Darden School of Business in Charlottesville. And then we have actually a relative newcomer to UC Davis. She's been there only 9 months. She had spent time in the Boston area at Babson for quite some time. And that's Andrea Shaw, who's Senior Director of Admissions at UC Davis' Graduate School of Management. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so give me a sense for how the applicant pool has changed in the past 3 years. I mean, it's generally acknowledged that all of the anti-immigration rhetoric in the United States and the uncertainty of getting the work visa has led to a significant decline in international applicants. Does that mean that your incoming classes are less international than they were before? Lance?
Start with me. Okay, so first of all, happy to be here. Good to see you all out here. Actually, we continue to have this is kind of getting some feedback. So have a strong voice. I'm going to try to do it without it. Okay, so we continue to see pretty strong demand actually from our international applicants, but it is down some. And, we continue to be on the road, and we're going to be all over the world. This starting actually next month. I'll be in Africa, and many of my colleagues will be in Asia and other parts of the world, trying to continue to talk about the value of the MBA. But we're also talking about how Kellogg values our international population, and sort of regardless of what is happening in our political climate, we are still dedicated and committed to having a strong, diverse class. So, yeah.
Now, another way, I don't know if applicant pools have changed dramatically in terms of gender balance, but certainly class profiles reflect far greater numbers of women going into full-time MBA programs. John, do you have a perspective on that?
So yeah, we definitely are making a push for women, and I think a lot of schools are as well. I think for us at UCLA Anderson, the female candidates have been stabilized for us for the past couple of years. We're hovering around 33%. Some schools have more, but generally that's where we're at right now. But it is a good time for women to apply to MBA programs. A lot of schools are looking for that, and they really want to add that to their population.
Taylor, do you see any major changes in the applicant pool in the past 3 years at Darden?
Yeah, absolutely. I think speaking less about demographics, I would say one of the things we've noticed at Darden is there's a much greater interest in our applicants specifically in careers oriented around technology. So that probably comes as no surprise to anybody, but that is something we're definitely seeing. We obviously ask candidates about their goals and their career goals specifically.
How about UC Davis? You get a lot of tech people there automatically.
Yes, we do. I'm usually like you, Lance. I don't need one of these, but yes. So we have seen a shift, even being there just 9 months. I obviously have done quite a bit of looking at our profile, and we have full-time and part-time. We are still, as Lance says, very active internationally, a little more strategic in where we go. Asia, India, and Latin America, and all of those areas actually tie closely to what we do at UC Davis, and we can talk more down there. But we're really doing a better job at really looking at where should we go, even in the United States, that ties to the person and the curriculum and our faculty that makes the most sense for the best fit. So being real strategic there. And I will make a comment on women as well, because we are, as you said as well, doing more to bring women who are increasing in the applicant pool taking the GMAT score. So looking at ways to showcase what we do, because as you all know, work-life balance is hugely important, especially we see in the women demographic. So, and I will just reiterate the careers as well. With our part-time program, there's a shift more and more to high-tech, biotech, healthcare.
So beyond, the academics and your standardized test score, how do you determine fit with the personality and the demands of your MBA program? Lance?
Yeah, sure. So for us, I think it's going to be in the interview process. We'll get a real opportunity to meet our candidates. We're still one of the only schools who strives to interview every one of our applicants. So we leverage our alumni, we leverage our student body to interview as many of our candidates as we can. And through that process, we'll get a chance to meet them and know a lot more about them. We also have a video essay component that is part of our application. I see some head nods like, yeah, I know he has that.
But what do you ask on video?
Say?
What do you ask on video?
So this year is interesting. So this year we're going to, first of all, ask them to introduce themselves to the admissions committee and to their Kellogg classmates. So that's a change from what we've had in years past. Our second video essay question is going to be about what they are pursuing in their MBA, how will they get there, and how Kellogg specifically will fit into that. And then our third question is going to be around a challenge that our applicants have faced either in their professional or their personal lives, and how they were able to work through that. So that gives us a lot of insight into who they are as individuals. And the video essay questions are only 1 minute long a piece, so it's not like you'll be on video for a long time, but it does give us a lot more insight into who they are.
Although some people hate to be photographed or videotaped.
Well, here's the other thing that is interesting is many companies now are starting to leverage video as part of their interview process.
Right.
So if nothing else, is giving our students a chance to practice early before they are doing that as their first round interviews.
Indeed. Remember I mentioned before I've had the opportunity to sit in 3 admissions committee meetings and as a fly on the wall. And one of them had video. And man, some of those videos, they're awful. But I will give you this, okay? Admissions committees are pretty receptive and open, and they get it. Some people are very familiar. It's like, they were on TV their entire life, and they get it, and they understand it. And other people, it's like, whoa, I don't want to do any of this. And they understand that, and they compensate for it. John, what are you looking at other than, the typical things that we are afraid of, like our GMAT and GRE scores, and maybe our undergraduate transcripts if we goofed off a lot when we were younger?
Yeah, so one of the things we look at, well, a couple of things to kind of see if you're going to be a fit for our community outside of like the essays that Lance mentioned and stuff like that, is we really, because we're such a collaborative school and a lot of what our students do really is to give back to themselves and to kind of enhance our communities. We do look at your extracurricular activities. And I don't mean like undergrad, definitely great undergrad, but even things that you're doing with your community right now, within your jobs at the moment, because, you know, for us at Anderson, the average student's actually a part of 8 different clubs, and they're actually a part of 3 leadership roles within those 8 clubs. So it's really important to make sure that we find students who will fit in and also want to give back. And really, they're the ones who will be leading the days on the jobs where you go visit different companies. They're the ones putting the different conferences together, right, to get companies out here, get executives out here to really network. They have this thing called I think it's called like Thursday evening. They keep changing the name, but it's basically drinking and networking. So, you know, and they're the ones inviting the people out there. So it's just really important that when you apply to Anderson and you want to be a part of this community, that you're ready to kind of work outside of the academics, like not just academics, but also focus on the community building as well.
You know, that's an interesting point because, you know, there's this famous quote from John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And in many cases, admissions officers really do look at what contribution you will make to their community and making their community better. And they judge that by your past. What have you done either at work or outside of work that has made the environment, the society, other people better than they otherwise would be? So at Darden, where you're 100% pretty much case study school, and 50% of your grade is based on participation, does that mean that you have to be an extrovert to be successful at Darden?
That's a great question, and I'll start by saying I do think that's a common misconception, right, that you have to be an extrovert to succeed in an environment that's case-based. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the CASE method, it essentially means our classroom is entirely discussion-driven, right? There's no such thing as lecture at Darden. And again, like John mentioned, a significant portion of our students' grades are based on preparation and participation. I would actually say I think it's a really great experience, this case-based environment, for people who maybe are a little bit more introverted to really stretch themselves. One thing that's unique to our experience, you know, when students arrive, they're assigned a section. So this is a group of 60 students that they spend a lot of their first year with. Many students will say it's their first family. So in some ways, it's a safe environment to practice those soft skills and really to become more comfortable with sharing information with your peers. Yeah, especially helpful, I think, for those people who might identify as a bit more introverted, for sure.
Andrea, how do you determine fit with your program?
Yeah, great question. So we are, if you looked into some of the UCs, Davis is one of the smaller UCs. Our cohorts are smaller than the others, and we pride ourselves on being a close-knit community. And being collaborative must be a UC thing. Really, our faculty are incredibly accessible, small group of faculty, highly ranked. And so we often say that we look for someone, fit-wise, all the other profile dynamics aside, who is comfortable, who wants to be part of that small community. And I will say, although this is my belief, I've heard this from several of my faculty and the dean as well, that we look for kind people to join our campus because it's small. You really, one bad apple, spoils the whole bunch. I don't know if you guys even know that song from way back when. But anyway, we do look, I'm being silly about it, but in general, when you're in a close-knit community, which we're very proud of, at Davis, we look for someone who will really fit within our community and also will grow within the community. So,
yeah, exactly. I want to address something that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering or have wondered as they started their journey to get an MBA. Is it worth it? You look at the prices on these degrees, and my God, they cost sticker shock, and they should. They're very expensive. You've got to take yourself out of work for nearly 2 years, so there's the opportunity cost of your lost income. In general, I think people are looking at an overall cost of $250,000 for the degree. Is it really worth it? Lance?
So I'm going to answer the question based off of conversations that I've had with our alumni. So I travel, when we Okay, all right. So
Only for the live stream.
okay, so again, I'm going to answer the question based off of conversations I've had with our alumni. I travel a ton for work, and so we leverage our alumni in pretty much every event that we do. And I hear over and over again them saying, if I had the opportunity to do this again, I would do it all over again. I hate the loan repayment. However, the way that they have been able to accelerate their careers or pivot their careers into something that they were more passionate about, definitely the MBA was the conduit to help them make that transition. And so yes, so for me, I would say, yes, it is worth the cost. It's an investment in yourself. It is an investment in your career. So many people are caught up in careers that they may not feel like it's valuable for them. They may not be getting the return that they're looking for as far as gratification in that work. And so the MBA helps you be able to find that fit, not just in a cohort, but also in a career that you're looking for.
John, you have a perspective?
Yeah, same thing. I would say that, the immediate return might be daunting at first because you're paying all this money to, to get this degree. But from what I hear from alumni too, it's like, at Anderson, Parker, which is our career center, will help you pretty much source your first job post-MBA. But everyone I talk to, their second, their third, their fourth job actually came from their network. So it's their classmates that got them that job, right? Or someone affiliated with Anderson. So I think, yeah, it's scary at first, but at the same time, if you think, say, 20, 30 years down your career, I would say it's totally worth it. And, even so, if you look at GMAT data in general, like most students pay their loans back in 4 years. If you can do it aggressively, it can be done in 2. So I'd say, depending on like who you are, where your life situation's at, I would say it's definitely going to be a worthwhile transformative experience for yourself.
Now, Taylor, I know when you go for your MBA, you're going to get it for free from Darden because you're an employee there. But do you have a point of view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd love to share something my colleague shared with me a couple of years ago that I think holds really true. Business schools are very different from other types of graduate school, like law schools, like medical schools, who in a lot of ways are gatekeepers, right? You can't practice law, you can't practice medicine for good reason without one of those degrees. You can in many ways be successful within business without having an MBA. And that said, I think that keeps our programs really innovative. We're constantly having to take a step back and evaluate, what sorts of things are we doing to ensure this really is a valuable experience, especially given the price tag. We work regularly kind of synthesizing feedback from students who are out there in the real world with faculty to really dig deeper into, all right, what sorts of things do we need to do to ensure, again, that this is still really valuable? Kind of an anecdote, I work really closely and help manage our deferred admissions program, so I'm regularly engaging with college students and talking about this experience and what it might look like down the road. And it's almost exciting that I can share that it's hard to predict, what our curriculum will look like 2, 3, or 4 years from now, because I know it's constantly evolving based on the market, based on the demands of the industry. So yes, I really do think it's worth it.
So, truth be told, I got my MBA at Darden. So if you would like to ask any questions about that, I'd be more than happy. Great program, obviously. Definitely one that has reaped the benefits of an MBA from a wonderful school. So I will share that and I've shared already, that investing in yourself is it's the most powerful thing you can do. As I shared, it's never taken away from you. You will always have it. And although you may right now have a great job, you may not in 2 years or in 3 years, but you'll have your MBA. And it always keeps you one notch above somebody else. It has for me, and it's been a very long time since I graduated from Darden. And I have always felt that that not only has it given me that extra piece on my resume, but we can talk to you about the power of a network till, we're blue in the face, but the power of an MBA network, your cohorts that you spend if you're in a full-time program, they're there for life. I still have connections, and a lot of it has to do with careers. I've often been, been in this educational business for a long time, and several of my classmates have decided to make the leap into education. And literally, it's a quick LinkedIn, can we talk? And we jump on the phone. And that's a value that you can't put a number to. So is it worth the investment? Initially, you may feel not, but I guarantee within a few short years, and I remember celebrating my last loan payment, it seems like, I never even had a loan. So, yeah, worth it.
And I'm just going to mention something that hasn't been mentioned. Number one, there's the list price of an MBA program, and then there's the invisible price. Schools are in an arms race with each other on scholarship aid, and in many cases, scholarship aid is very aggressive. So many students, if they need the money or if they have the stats and they are considered to be a real worthwhile candidate in the class, the schools will throw money at you, number one. Number two, when you look at return, it's often easy to just look at the starting salary and walk away from it. But that's really only the beginning. And even if you only look at the beginning, the stats show that you can double your income by getting an MBA, and the lowest increase on starting salary alone is generally around 50%. That's a pretty big leap in 2 years. Many of these jobs are actually unavailable to people who do not have MBA degrees. If you want to work for a global consulting firm that has a great brand name, or a bank, a global bank or investment banking firm, many of those jobs are just not available to you at all without the MBA degree, including many product management jobs in the tech sector today, which is a likely entry point for many tech jobs for MBAs. And then the third and final point is when you look at how transformational this experience is, it really is a gift that you give to yourself. I think there's two gifts that would allow you to be extremely generous to yourself. One is the gift of a friend or a partner, and the second is investing in your own education, which brings rewards above and beyond what you're learning in the program. As Andrea suggested, you can pick up a phone and access people all over the world who are willing to talk to you and want to bend over backwards to help you when you get an MBA from a really valued program. So,
the thing I was going to mention is the cost of an MBA. It may not be a good return if you're not really sure if this is what you want to do. So part of the reason why the application process is so rigorous and we ask you so many questions is we want to make sure this is something that you really want to do and you understand how the MBA is going to help you, not only transform your career opportunities, but also transform yourself. So, so the opportunity costs are way too great if you are not sure this is what you want to do. So that is the reason that we put you through the process that we do to ensure that.
yeah, great. So, John, what's the first thing you look at when you look at a resume from a candidate?
Oh, God. So first thing we look at, the first thing that's really glaring is actually your job, right? Where you're currently right now. We see where you are right now, the company you work for, and then more importantly, in terms of not quantity of your resume, but the quality of your resume, right? We want to see that in your job that you have executed on this, you've helped your client do X, Y, and Z. It's really great to see if there's quantitative numbers in it or just something where you led a group, you led a team. Listing out bullet points of what you do, your duties on a day-to-day basis might not be the best thing to do. That just, you'll probably need help on getting your resume together, but, showing accomplishments is really good. And then your career progression too, right? Like if you stayed in the same company, are you getting promotions? If you left to go to a different company, is it a lateral movement or was it a type of promotion type thing? So, it's just a lot. It kind of adds on to your story. So I would say those are the first 3 or 4 things I would look at on a resume.
It's funny. Now, Andrea, if it were me, I would be looking at, okay, are you a mountain climber? Do you like music? Do you go to the opera? Do you play the cello? Whatever. I mean, do you look at those kinds of things on a resume?
Oh, yeah. I was actually going to say my first thing is I read your essay because I want to know your story. I'm a big story person. I've read thousands and thousands of applications over the years.
I bet you're a poet.
I'm a poet. Well, am I? I guess I'm a poet. Yes, I was an economist. And so, yes, I like essays because I want to know a little bit more about who you are because I will remember that. I may, as we did at the very beginning, have I think it was like big data, each person had a bullet point about them. And that's kind of what we do in admissions is we read a lot of applications. So we immediately want to know what's your story. And then I dive into a resume. But I love the other pieces of it because going back to what I shared about Davis, but just us in general, I think as admissions counselors, we want to look holistically at who you are. The numbers are going to come through, your GMATs, your GPA, number of years work experience, all the data points, but it's really the essays. And at Davis, I just rewrote three essays because I wanted to have a little more fun with them. So when you approach those, I would definitely be authentic, kind of to what John is saying too. Like, what's the real you?
So Taylor, if you were in fact applying to Darden, what would you want the school to know about you in the essay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important as you guys are going through this exploratory process that you get a really good understanding for, what is unique about each of these programs you're applying to. One of the things we're really looking for in our application process, both in the application itself and in the interview is, are you somebody that has demonstrated some type of impact, whether it's in your jobs, in your extracurricular community involvement. The University of Virginia at large, and Darden included, really pride themselves on this idea of student self-governance. So, little known fact, UVA is very much run by the students for the students. It's kind of part of its creation in the early 1800s, a democratic institution. So students at Darden really do have the opportunity to shape their experience. They have the opportunity to advise our dean, our senior leadership at the school. So we're really looking for people that want to make an impact and be really strong contributors within our community. So if I were applying to Darden, I would really want that to come across in my essays. That said, if I was applying to other programs, I'd want to figure out what's unique and important to that school and that admissions committee, and I would shape it and cater towards them in that way.
Schools really want to know that as a candidate, you know a lot about them already, right? I mean, they want to know that you've done your basic work and research and you have a sense for what you're actually applying for. And I saw that again and again in the admissions committee that I attended a couple weeks ago. And if you showed that you weren't keenly aware of some key aspects of the program, you're much more likely to be rejected. That is my experience. Lance, how much of the decision to admit, waitlist, or deny a person admission is based on gut versus facts?
Wow, that's a tough question. So I think it really depends on each application. We're going to look at them differently. We have a rubric that we're going to measure each application through. However, to your point on understanding Kellogg, understanding the things that we have to offer are really important for us to know. But we also want to know, based on that, how are you going to add value to our program? So I think this is something that I've seen a lot of our applicants, it's a miss for them, is they'll say, Kellogg has these different resources and I'm excited about taking advantage of these resources. But the best applications are those who are saying, and then based on that and based on your culture and your community, here's what I will bring. Here's what I'm excited about doing. Here's a club that I may want to start or that I may want to have a leadership role in. That then, for me, as I'm reading an application, I start picturing that person being a part of our community. And then I get excited about that. And then if everything else looks good, then it's a much easier choice for me to say yes to.
Now, inevitably, when you're in a committee meeting with your colleagues will have met applicants along their journey. And your colleagues will become, in some cases, emotionally attached to the candidates. So let me go down to what that could mean. So let's say, John, you're here today, and there are candidates here. They go out of their way to talk to you about Anderson today, and then they show up on campus and they look you up, or they see when you're having a coffee chat in San Francisco again, and they come and meet you again. Does that affect the way you think about them?
It does. I think it affects the way we think about how much you want to be a part of our community. So, same with a lot of other schools here, you want to show that you're invested in us, and the way to do that is to constantly visit us or in any way possible, right? So you're going to do it by showing up to an event like this, going to a coffee chat, meeting students or connecting with a student. We have our Admissions Ambassador Corps, so they're roughly like 100 or so, 107 I think this year, students that are on our website that if you look at the LinkedIn profile and their email, you can actually see and look for a student that kind of mimics your career, where you want to go, and really reach out to them, go like, hey, like, is this school tell me about Anderson, tell me about your story, and how can I be a part of this community. And then also on top of that, during the interview process, if you do get invited to an interview, you're actually being interviewed by a student. So a second-year student is interviewing to see if, and it's very conversational, and it's very much like, why do you want to come to Anderson? So it's just, you really have to make sure that when you are looking at schools that you do enough research to let us know that you did your due diligence, and that when you come here, that it's not a mistake, and that you don't end up leaving or not contributing to the community.
Now, should someone who gets a GMAT score below your average even bother applying?
It's a really great question. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. I think, as all of you are probably aware, a posted average means our programs have admitted students with numbers, with GMAT scores, with GPAs, both above and below. And I think I speak for all of us when I say our processes are holistic in nature. And I know that sounds like a very canned admissions response, but it's very true. We're looking at a lot of different things, and I even know within our team specifically, while we are very well calibrated and we know what we're looking for, the way in which we read through an application and things that stand out to us differ from admissions committee member to admissions committee member. GMAT and GPA are not the first thing I look at when I read an application, truthfully. I'm actually also very story-oriented, and I really love diving deeper into those essays. Everything does get evaluated, but truthfully, I would never let having a score below a school's posted average discourage you from applying, especially as if you really feel like that program is a good fit for you and you can make a case as to why that is. Because again, we're looking at a lot of different things, and as we touched on earlier in this conversation, many of us do get emotionally invested, for lack of a better word, in candidates, and we really are interested in admitting not only students that have strong academic profiles, but students who we really think would be a good contributor within our community and bring a new perspective, and that could be you, regardless of your GMAT score.
Andrea, do you assign weights to the different metrics that are used to evaluate a candidate?
Yeah, we do sign weights, yes, and have rubrics and make sure that we're all on the same page on my admissions team. So there are weights, but I will say that although you may have a GMAT, or we also do the GRE conversions and GPAs that are below average, I think you want to think about how far below that average are you, just to be quite candid on that, because obviously those scores, those tests, have a component of you being successful in that program. And there's a reason until they change. And having two teenage boys, I'd love to see standardized tests just go away. But so I think you don't want to totally ignore, because that is a piece of the weight. And again, I think talking to alumni, talking to current students will give you an idea. And obviously, there are holistically other pieces of your application that we do look at. So I don't know if that give a little bit more detail around the weighting, but also some for us at Davis, a reality check around if you're substantially below an average, you may want to think or consult with an admissions director counselor who could advise you on ways to work with that. Again, ideally, everybody wants you to succeed and have the right school where you can do that.
Lance, does Kellogg ever provisionally accept a candidate and ask the candidate to retake a GMAT or GRE?
We don't, but what we do is if someone is early in the process, so I've counseled many of our applicants who have applied and then they say, well, I really would love to increase my GMAT. We will allow our candidates to provide us an update anytime between the time that they submit their application and the time that we make a decision. So many of our applicants have applied with a particular GMAT score, and then maybe a month to a month and a half later, they'll retake that, submit us the updated score. In many cases, they have done much better, and then we will take that highest GMAT before we will make a final decision. So, but we won't provisionally, admit them.
You think too much attention is being paid to the GMAT? I mean, I talk to people who hire $500 an hour one-on-one tutors to get a GMAT score up by 20 or 30 points. I hear admission consultants continually tell people, here's the tough love. You got to retake the test, and you got to score 30, 50 points higher than you have. Are we over-indexing standardized test scores? John?
I mean, it is a data point, so I will put that out there. And I think for most schools, if you look at their profile, look at the average, look at the range too, right? So I know we post our range. So for example, our incoming class this year has an average GMAT of 719, but if you look at the range, and this is the 80% range, so there actually are scores below and above it. It's from 680 to 750. So I think you don't have to necessarily place that much weight on that GMAT if you're around that range. But what I will say is you do have to give an admissions committee reasons to admit you, right? Because I think there is this misconception that everyone thinks that we're looking to deny you. But the actual fact is we're looking for reasons to admit you. So if you are having a softer GMAT score, then what you will have to do then is really make it up in other areas, right? So that's when hopefully your GPA is great. That's the one thing you can't change. So if your GPA is also on the softer side, then you really have to craft your story like really well. That's when your essay is critical. That's when your recommendation is critical, your work experience. And just because you do have to make it up and really just convince us that even though these metrics are a bit lower, that you still do deserve a place in the community.
Why do schools report GMAT's ranges in the 80 percentile as opposed to give us the whole range? Now, here's my rationale for that. If you give us the whole range, it would give people who actually have slightly lower GMAT scores courage and encouragement to apply. You give them the 80% range, and you're discouraging people below the bottom number that you're reporting. Now, is that because you don't want to see their applicants beyond that number in the 80% range, or what?
It's a couple of reasons. I think one is just, it's kind of, if schools were to do it, that's what the common practice is, right? So we're doing what other schools are doing. And then two, if your score really is that out of range, we don't want to give you any type of, I hate to say it, but false hope, in a way that, just because we all heard the story that one person that got in, right? But one is okay, like two becomes, a little dicey at that point. So, that's why the 80% range is put out there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the ideal skill set that someone should come into a business school with. Andrea, do you have a sense of that?
Skipped over you. Hi. So as far as a skill set to be successful, and I know that there's discussion with, I see this a lot lately with folks who would like to come right, students who want to come right from undergrad into an MBA program. But I truly believe the time that you spend before business school working, developing skill sets around working with teams, between learning various elements of what you'll hone in on with business education, whether it's, the talk, right? The lingo of business, whether it's marketing, finance, just kind of being in the real world. So the skill set around successfully navigating teams, successfully navigating other people that you're working with, that's the EQ of things, working, if you even are lucky enough to manage, those skill sets are important. I personally have seen business education evolving from the focus on the quant and the elements of finance and investing and accounting to really more of the skill sets around collaborating, getting along with others, being inspirational, listening. Listening is a huge skill set that I teach on the side as well, and I feel that if we could just hone in on that. So, and I could go on, and I won't, but but my intent is to share that it's not just the actual hard skill sets, it's that soft that is critically important that I truly look for, and that's why I read the essays, and I take a lot of power from your interview and your connecting.
Taylor, what about at Darden?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I think it's certainly a lot of the similar. I will say, Darden is really well known for being academically rigorous. It is a very quantitative program, so we are looking for students that have that strong quantitative skill set. You can demonstrate that in different ways. It can be both or either on your academic transcript. It can be via a standardized test score, specifically that quantitative subscore. It can also be through your professional experience. But I would agree, I think we are seeing this shift where we're also looking for people who are collaborative, people who know how to work well with people who are very different from them, right? Our classes are exceptionally diverse in a lot of ways. Looking for people that are open-minded. I would also say if any of you guys have, a background in psychology, I think we're really looking for people that have a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. People who are open to learning new things and open to change. People who aren't kind of in this mindset revolving around, oh, I can't grow, I can't change. So looking for those types of things.
What about failure? Is that something that anyone should address in an application? Or is it something that, no, every applicant should be walking on water, I'm perfect, I'm beautiful, I'm intelligent, I'm the world's gift to the world. I've done nothing wrong, no mistakes ever, never failed. Is that the candidate you want? Or is it possible for someone to mention a failure and mention it without hurting their candidacy? Lance.
Yeah, we know that nobody's perfect. And so actually one of our video essay questions, and I talked about the challenge question, is actually a bank of questions that applicant can get. One of those might even ask you about a time that you failed and how were you able to, come back from that. And that's important for us to know because, the reality is everyone is never going, you're never going to get everything that you want on the first time that you try. And so that's important to us. It sort of humanizes the person. How you manage that failure is much more important to us than the fact that you've had a failure. And so that's what we're looking for. Classes are going to be tough. Recruiting sometimes is tough. And students don't always get exactly what they want the first time. So if we know that they understand and know how to manage failure well, then we think that they'll be the ones that will be the most successful coming through our program.
John, you can talk about failure at Anderson?
Yeah, we actually give you a chance to talk about it in our application, right? We have an optional essay where you can discuss anything you want to let the admissions committee know about that you want that we might actually be looking at. And I think you should let us know because the last thing you want to do, especially for me, is for me to look at an employment gap or a bunch of failing grades and not tell me what happened, right? Because then I'm going to be, I can go down a rabbit hole if I really wanted to with stories of like, oh, like maybe they were just partying too hard and like this happened and they got, a bunch of Fs, or they just, I guess, found nirvana, quit their job one day and just walked away and climbed Mount Everest, right? So you don't want anyone to ever kind of be in that situation. So you do want to discuss, like, if you had failing grades, what was the reason? But then how do you learn from that, right? Like, how did you bounce back from that? Were you, this story happens all the time, right? I started out pre-med because I just thought that I was going to be a doctor. And then I took my first OChem class and oh crap, you know, so you just want to talk about that, but then you finally found your passion, and your grades improve. Same thing with a work employment gap. Like, things happen, you know, we were in a recession not too long ago, so that could be a possibility, but you do want to address things because you never want to leave it to the committee to make that decision for you.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because people will, if they don't know, they start assuming, and the assumptions tend to get negative. Andrea, did you confess to a failure when you applied to Darden?
I had something else I was going to say. I wasn't thinking about that. Can I confess to a failure? I would have. It's not coming to my mind, but
Clearly you didn't fail.
I clearly didn't fail. Well, I started college pre-med. I was laughing as you were saying that, John, and then I took chemistry, calculus, and whatever I took, and I switched to business and economics. So I probably talked a little bit about that, and how I took that and ran with it. But what I was going to say was that, again, it goes back to stories, and it doesn't even have to relate to a grade that you failed or an organization that you failed at. If you can tell us in an essay something that's maybe a different part of your life. I joke with my 17-year-old who played competitive basketball but didn't make his high school team. Didn't make his middle school team because of reasons that were beyond his control, and he fought, he got back, and he's been playing on his high school team. And so that's a story as an admissions director, maybe more undergrad than grad, but the essence of it, that you took something that was a hardship for you, a challenge, and you learned from it, and you applied yourself, and you redirected yourself, and in a trajectory that, you know, maybe leapfrogged you over where you would have been initially. So as you think about failures, don't just think about it as it relates to grades or college or your job. You know, a personal failure that you've learned from is a great story.
Hey, I want to thank our great panelists today. And I want to thank you for being an engaged and enthusiastic audience. We really appreciate it. And everyone out there on the live stream, thanks for watching. And Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. Taylor, you will apply to Darden. I just know it in my gut. John, thanks for being with us again. And Lance, it's a pleasure to meet you here today. Thank you.